It's not funny when I fuck up, Kat. Jesus Christ. If we were at work and I was a surgeon.
It's a little funny.
This is the last show. I can't do this anymore.
Well, I'm glad I made it back.
1980s now.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of 1980s Now, a weekly examination of the importance of 1980s pop culture and its continued influence today. My name is Will, and joining me, as always, are my friends and co-hosts, Kat and John. Hey, guys.
Hi, guys.
Hello.
And look who's back, John, and a special reward, John, for coming back to the show. I'd like to remind folks to check out your channel, Gen X Grown Up. He's got both a podcast and a YouTube channel, and,
Thank you.
as we mentioned last week, ton of videos there from his time over at CES. A lot of My Arcade, new products that we were teased about, and some I want to get my hands on.
It was a huge showing. They have so much new stuff coming out next year, and I couldn't keep up. There was so much stuff. I couldn't cover all of it, in fact. There's so much stuff.
John gets a special award for coming back to the show, for returning.
Yeah, because he's only been gone the once, so.
Okay.
I think that makes sense.
Contemplate this.
I don't know. Hey, on today's, look, we're rusty. Look, you can clearly tell. Hey, on today's show, we'll review current news items related to 1980s media, including, Huy Quan is an action hero, thanks to Steven Spielberg.
Yeah.
No, Rob Lowe didn't record with Toto. He's the one who's telling people that. It's so funny. Donald Fagen has strong words for Yacht Rock. Romulus director has fixed the cringy special effects, or so he says. Police Academy star Steve Guttenberg is fighting fires in L.A. And Demi Moore was a popcorn actor, it turns out. I want to ask you this question when we get to that. Is that a bad thing? I mean, is it bad to be commercially successful?
I will be postulating between now and then.
All right. Hey, quickly, before we get started here, John. You gotta get a
Focus.
Yeah. Hey, keep an ear out for my conversation with professor and author Kate McKinney. We chat about Kate's book. I know you were, but what am I?
I wonder what that's about.
Subtitle on Pee Wee Herman, because it explores the cultural legacy of Pee Wee and his cult television show, Pee Wee's Playhouse. It's pretty cool. It turns out this show has more layers and meaning specifically built into it by the creators than I ever realized. And certainly I got a lot of enjoyment and a lot of meaning derived to it for me, which I talked to Kate about. But it turns out in that same way, it was very important to queer kids growing up in the 1980s and 90s watching the show, and continues to have been an influence on them today. And before you say, look, all right, don't you see, these things, you see what you want to see in something, and, what she says, it influenced queer people, I might say, well, it influenced me. But because I'm not queer, it's, influenced strange nerds, like nerdy things or whatever.
Yeah. Well, you see in it what you see, right? You get out of art what is in it for you. So that makes sense.
But it turns out the creators, the writers, the producers of the show, many of them were part of that community. And so they were, as she calls it, queer coding the show. And it's pretty cool. But in addition to that, she examines how the roles in which technology played in Pee Wee's Playhouse. He had Conky and Globey and a number of different things that were like AI.
Yes.
But how they were sort of takes or riffs on stuff in the 50s that we were promised, because a lot of the show is kind of a throwback and that has throwback sensibilities, but also is kind of a precursor to the stuff that we have today if our technology wasn't spying on us to feed us ads. So it's more aligned with what we would want, really. Anyway, she does a much better job explaining it in her book. I do chat with Kate about that during our interview. Check it out. All right. Hey, let's get caught up on 1980s. As reported by Empire magazine, Steven Spielberg encouraged Huy Quan to pursue an action role. Look, we've talked about him before. It's really just heartwarming, right? I mean, we loved this guy when he was a kid, our age, back in the 1980s. There's something endearing about him. But he's had one of the most incredible second acts in Hollywood history. Following, these scene-stealing characters he played in Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom and The Goonies. John doesn't know that, but in The Goonies, he's in that as well. He disappeared from the silver screen, and instead he went to film school. He worked, behind the scenes. He trained with Corey Yuen, legendary action coordinator, who, Hong Kong, this guy is a legend in Hong Kong, but in America, he did a number of action films. X-Men, which Kiwi was assisted him on that ultimately, the stunt coordinating, action coordinating on that film, and so on and so on. But after this decades-long hiatus, he came back with and kicked Hollywood's door down, just like Short Round was knocking out Thuggies and Temple of Doom.
But this time he did it with a fanny pack.
He did indeed.
He was like, he had some small parts in a couple of films, and then boom, he wins an Oscar for his performance in Everything Everywhere All at Once. And now he is on the verge of becoming a full-fledged action star, albeit a unique one, which we'll talk about in a moment. Mm-hmm. And that turns out in part, at least to his dear old friend, Steven Spielberg. I'm really excited about this film. If you've seen the trailers, the movie's called Love Hurts. It looks like a fight-fueled, I really wrote this down. I know I make it sound like I'm making it up off the fly, but some of the messing up is built into that, Cat. A full-on fight-fueled comedy in which he stars as a realtor who seems like, just a milquetoast guy, but has a secret. Because formerly he was an assassin. And it's not clear to me in the trailer if he knows that or not. I feel like he might be a Manchurian assassin in a sense.
Oh.
But maybe not. Maybe he's just really good at, maintaining this, vanilla character to hide his past.
There's a little bit of a trend of those kind of, not a comedy, but it follows kind of the John Wick model. Like I used to be and I'm out and they brought me back in. Mm-hmm. And Bob Odenkirk had a film called Nobody not too long ago where he used to be and he's not anymore. Right. They brought him back in, one of these. And it's the more unassuming the character, the more entertaining those movies are because I remember talking to my co-hosts over at Gen X Grown Up. I'm looking forward to this Bob Odenkirk action movie. Like, what? He's an assassin? No. But that's what made it so charming. And so I'm expecting the Huy Quan version of this new type of movie to be even extra entertaining because he's even more charming.
I'm ready to watch it. I'm on board. I got to go find the trailer. I didn't manage to watch it.
John, you provide a couple of examples of, some contemporary films that are similar in that regard.
I did.
But even still, for Kiwi, he thought, this isn't for me. This isn't, in fact, he told producers originally that this is something for Jason Statham or The Rock. I think you got the wrong number here. But ultimately, he went for it following the advice of his old friend. Quan explained, quote, I was at an event with Steven Spielberg, name dropper, much. And he was asking me.
That's for Kiwi. There you go.
Yes. And he was asking me, Key, how are you doing? And I said, Steven, I'm not doing so well because of all the. Now listen to his complaint. Look, I love this guy. I really do.
Yes.
Yeah.
I tried to get him on the show before this shit happened.
I would love to have his problems. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes.
So look, this is why he's not doing so well. Because of all the love and support that I had gotten during the whole award season, I was so worried that whatever I was going to do next, I would disappoint. All right, that makes sense.
Except, how could he? How could he disappoint? But I understand.
Yeah, how do you follow up? And I'd imagine if we did some sort of Google, there's a list of actors who did a really shitty movie right after they won an Academy Award, like just tanked it.
Right.
Yep.
But his former Temple of Doom director and Goonies producer stepped up to help. What was that? What did she go from? She went from My Cousin Vinny.
Exactly. The fact that you don't know tells you it was garbage.
Yeah, but you know what the good news for her was? She started with My Cousin Vinny, right? I mean, she won an Academy Award for that.
Yeah, I know. Right. And then what?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, you're right. His former Temple of Doom director and Goonies producer stepped up to help. Spielberg invited Quan to lunch, and after Quan pitched the project to his friends, Spielberg encouraged him to do it. Yeah, but as I mentioned, his reluctance wasn't due to the script. It was due to the fact that he didn't feel suited for this role. He said, quote, I didn't think anybody that looks like me could star in this role. Luckily, they didn't give up on me. They came back for a third time, end quote. And then once he saw that filmmakers had created storyboards and designs that had him drawn into them, he was like, oh, no, they're serious about this.
I guess I'm in this movie.
And then finally he understood they're looking to create a different type of action hero, not a Jason Statham, not a The Rock, not even Bob Odenkirk. I think Bob Odenkirk, for, as the characters he's played in the past, which are, kind of nebbishy, I guess. Huy Quan's even more surprising, right? Except for the fact that the dudes really can fight and do all those things that these characters have to do.
Yeah.
It turns out everything that he's been doing in the last 20 years makes him perfect for the role.
So if you've ever worked with Steven Spielberg, can you just go to lunch with him? Is that how it works?
I know, right? I'm so jealous.
I didn't know that was the deal.
Doesn't he sound like a great guy? I mean,
Yes.
it's just so heartwarming to know that, he knew when he was a little kid, he was like 13 or something, 12.
Yeah.
And he's still there and he's still available to him,
Yeah.
And I imagine he'd be there for him even if he hadn't won an Academy Award, but I don't know. Maybe Steven Spielberg has a threshold.
Maybe. No D-listers, seeing above only.
I'm particularly, encouraged by this film, not only because Key's in it, but because the trailer looks great. But it's actually directed by a gentleman named Jonathan Seebe. I hope I say that right. It's his directorial debut, but he came up very much like David Leitch, who was actually a producer on the film. He first started as a stuntman, then became a fight coordinator, and now this is his first film directing. So, we've known of other films where you have a stunt person directing it. The action's fantastic. David Leitch directed The Fall Guy. He directed other films before that. That's a prime example of that.
Yeah.
But so I don't have high hopes. I'm very excited. I very rarely feel like I'm motivated to go to the theater to see something right there and then. But this is a film for me that's on that list.
Yeah, I'll be there too.
And Disney, come on, give us a short round movie before Harrison Ford dies.
Right.
You just need a scene at the beginning where he's like, Indy, I need your help with this. And he's like, I can't anymore.
That mumble is really hard to understand.
It's getting weaker and weaker.
He's sundowning,
and weaker.
Cat. He's sundowning.
That's the 90-year-old Harrison Ford mumble.
He's completely naked. This is the film. He's completely naked, but he's got his gun belt on and a whip.
You talking about short round or Indy?
Both actually.
Oh, both.
Yeah,
both. That's a different kind of movie now.
That's how he approaches Indy. He has to. He finds he's naked, so he strips down. Hang on, Indy, calm down. You just need like a passing of the torch moment at the beginning of this short round movie. I need your help. He's old. You can't do it. I'm sorry, whatever. And then so short round goes on the adventure.
Here, take my whip.
I like this trailer had a very Jackie Chan Hollywood or Hong Kong movies vibes. And I think, I don't know. I dig it.
When does it come out?
February 7th.
Right around the corner.
Brandon says, any good fortune and opportunity that comes Quan's way is deserved. He is always so kind-hearted in interviews and seems 100% genuine. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay with that?
Next up in 1980s news, per Ultimate Classic Rock, Toto never recorded with Rob Lowe. Now, who was asking? Anyway, whatever. I don't know. Who was wondering, right? So Rob Lowe, like every other middle-aged white person, has a podcast.
Oh, that's true. Okay, good.
I say middle-aged white man.
Yep, that checks out. Yep.
And some folks that are half Puerto Rican has a podcast. And on the January 9th episode of his podcast is called Literally, which is something his character on Parks and Rec said all the time.
Literally.
Oh.
And he said
it's pronounced literally.
And he used it incorrectly, of course. It was mostly figuratively, but
I know, always right. Yeah, exactly.
Metaphorically. But during that episode, the actor casually mentioned to Bill Simmons, who's the executive producer of HBO's Yacht Rock documentary, that he'd considered transitioning from acting to music. Quote, there was a minute in the 80s where I was definitely doing too much Bolivian marching powder and just being a fucking lunatic. I love music so much that I got it into my head that maybe I should think more about music, and I cut a demo with Toto. Now, he admits he's on too much cocaine.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Can you trust your judgment?
We can't trust his judgment, clearly. It seems he was using the Bolivian marching powder at the same period of time as he thinks he recorded with Toto.
Oh, okay. So maybe, yeah. I think there's an innocent explanation, but the fact that he would even think that, you know what we should do? I should be a rock star. Yeah, I can do it. Hey. And he's sort of cut him in a studio singing a bunch of gibberish. Then they wake up the next morning, they're like, we can't use any of this. And these burn the tapes. Those comments caught people's attention and had many fans wondering how his collaboration with Toto happened. I mean, yeah, you're Rob Lowe, but is it like the Monkees? They all live together and you just call one phone?
Toto HQ.
Hey guys, it's Rob Lowe. When Ultimate Classic Rock reached out to the band for comment, Toto spokesperson Steve Karras offered some clarity. Quote, Toto as a band never did a session with Rob Lowe. He explained, adding that guitarist Steve Lukather, who, by the way, Toto and Steve Lukather contributed so much to 80s music in addition to Toto that we don't even know. Mm-hmm. I mean, Steve Lukather was, did a lot for Quincy Jones, for Michael Jackson, and improved a lot of those songs on Thriller, for example. Guys from Toto played, instruments on the Thriller album. I think Toto essentially, seriously, was like the backing band for the Thriller album. And more, and they've done a lot more. But Steve Lukather was blindsided by the sudden attention surrounding Lowe's story. But Tokarra said, quote, "The reporting is not accurate." So what happened, according to Karras, he believes, is that Lowe spent one afternoon in the studio with just two of the band's members, David Paich and Steve Porcaro. The endeavor proved fruitless, and a true collaboration never took shape. And though absent for all this, Lukather did confirm he spent time with Lowe, quote, "once in 1985 in Japan, and I haven't seen him since."
Seems like an unnecessary correction. I mean, it's not as if Rob Lowe was making a bald-faced lie. Like, I've never met this guy in my old. No, he's like, it's semantics. I cut a demo. Maybe for Rob Lowe, he thinks what he did was cut a demo. He hung out with guys. They recorded a little. That's a demo of his ability to perform, I guess, but Toto's like, no, you never cut a demo with us. You hung out with these guys. And it's like, it's almost like they have skin in the game. Like they want to make him embarrassed that he claimed this because he kind of recorded a demo. They could have just said, oh yeah, we hung out a bit and recorded some stuff. They go, no, Rob, you didn't record a demo with us. You recorded a scratch track with it. It's almost like splitting hairs. Like he was hanging out with you. They recorded some stuff. It sucked. Move on.
And I was thinking maybe Rob Lowe could have just said, well, I recorded a little bit with some members of Toto.
But then you're splitting. Yeah, you shouldn't have to go that, so that I'm not called out. Let me give you the list of people who were in the room. No, he recorded with Toto. It's just, it's an offhanded thing. I don't think he was making a false claim. It was a shorthand for something he did. And now he's made to look like he's stolen valor for someone who performed with Toto and did not. That's not what he's saying. That's how I felt.
And what could they have recorded? Unless they took time to write some songs and write lyrics and then go to the studio or did it in the studio. I've been in these sessions before where, friends will rent out a studio to just jam. And they'll have a keyboard there and I'll be with them. And it's just like, hey, does anybody know U2? Any U2 songs? I mean, we're not making up a song on the spot. Usually just playing stuff you know already. So was it like, hey, what songs do you know, Rob? We'll record those as a demo. I don't know, whatever. But I agree with you, John. It's kind of.
I know the words to Africa.
We will not do Africa.
I think we're only talking about it because of social media, because him saying I recorded with Toto. Well, that sounds huge, right? That sounds like, whoa, how did we miss this? And people are talking about it. And so I guess that's why it ended up needing clarification, because it was not actually this huge deal. And
that's why we talk about anything, isn't it? Because it's on social media.
Yeah.
The immediacy of social media almost dictates that you must respond right away, because tomorrow there'll be some other story that you'll have to debunk and deal with. It's whatever the news of the day is, and you got to jump on it.
To John's point, like Lukather didn't have to say anything. He just said, no, I wasn't there. I do feel like, look, we're just speculating because we need content. But you feel like it's a little bit like a bunch of band nerds, right? Of which I put myself in that position. But that the feeling like Rob Lowe, look, the dude's ridiculously handsome, even still in his 60s. He's got successful TV shows. He seems like he's hosting
hair
other
almost
shows.
As good as Will's.
Right, exactly. He's got a podcast, and they're just like, you know what? Leave something for the rest of us. Maybe that's what it's like. No, we didn't record with you, There's some stuff that we have standards for, and it's ours, and we protect, and then you can have everything else, including most of the women.
You just go be good looking. You don't get to perform with Toto. Sorry.
Marcus says, I fucking hate that damn Africa song. Brandon says maybe Lowe was having cocaine dreams of his saxophone playing in St. Elmo's Fire. Yeah, you almost wondered, like, I played a musician once. I could do it, man. In a related...
If Eddie could do it, I could do it.
Yeah. In a related story, in another 1980s news, Donald Fagen's got some strong words about Yacht Rock. How do you guys feel about Yacht Rock?
I love Yacht Rock, except I don't call it that.
Okay.
I love it. But I call it lake songs for my own personal growing up reasons. Lake songs.
I didn't know there was anything softer than Yacht Rock, but you found it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
My my grandparents had a cabin, a falling apart cabin in the Catskills. Right. And so we spent every summer there. And that's when I heard radio because the TV was crappy. So the radio was always on and driving in the car to and from. And so that's when I would hear the music of the mid to late 70s. And it's so sentimental. And so I love it. And when I discovered it actually not had a name, someone gave it a name of Yacht Rock. It amused me. I don't identify with the source of it being called Yacht Rock.
Right.
So
I just think of it as easy listening rock, not heavy rock, not hard rock, not metal. It's, and like so many things, I think what you could classify as yacht rock evolved over time as, you know, like I think about how country and Western music has kind of become light rock in a lot of ways when you listen to it, but they wouldn't consider themselves yacht rock. Certainly they're country and Western, right? And so what you consider, I just look at it as not heavy rock and roll, and I don't care. It's fine for background music. It's not my favorite music, but yeah, it's fine.
Well, if you're unfamiliar with the genre, in November, HBO premiered a documentary about this so-called yacht rock. It features interviews with what the documentarians assert are the stalwarts of this music: Christopher Cross, Michael McDonald, Kenny Loggins, Steve Lukather, and more.
That's the Mount Rushmore.
But there's at least one star the documentarians couldn't get in front of their cameras. That is Donald Fagen, the co-founder, lead singer, co-songwriter, and keyboardist of Steely Dan. When invited by director Garrett Price to appear in his film about yacht rock, Fagen replied, "Why don't you go fuck yourself?"
Hey, it's not a no.
Saying there's a chance.
So if I do that, then you'll be on the show, you're saying, right?
Yeah. Well, Price confirmed to People that it was 100% real, this phone call, which is featured in the documentary. However, he added that Fagen's manager instantly called him back and granted permission for him to use 6 of Steely Dan's songs.
Damage Control.
Well,
yeah.
Yeah. So in a video in support of Fagen's response, music producer turned to YouTube star Rick Beato. I don't know if you've ever seen any of Beato's videos. Really fantastic. This guy is an accomplished music producer, super knowledgeable, multi-instrumentalist. Interviews some of the greatest musicians, you know, of our generation, certainly, and beyond. Anyway, he explains why the term yacht rock is, quote, derogatory. According to Beato, it's an oversimplification of the music featured in the documentary. The documentary, Beato continues, cherry picks specific songs to fit their narrative in order to lump together bands that are radically different from one another under a single dismissive banner.
Okay.
That banner, Beato says, is bullshit. So we're talking about feel-good music, like music. John called it something else. But we are talking about songs, right? Beato goes on to play examples of Steely Dan and some of the other acts that are considered yacht rock that are just pure rock. Some of them are really edgy and harder rock. So the groups themselves, I think, is mostly what he's taking issue to. You can't say all these bands are of a particular genre because, and call it yacht rock, because they're very different. Some of them are jazz and fusion. Steely Dan's a lot of jazz influenced.
Yeah.
Some are more rock.
Yep.
So you can't put them onto this one thing, and unless you do what they did, which is, just pick certain songs. And even still, what the fuck is yacht rock? It's just rock.
This very discussion resonates in my head, and it's very much like the Brat Pack. Like, here is a moniker that has been put on these particular actors, and they're bristling against it. They don't particularly care for it because of what it means to them. But that's not what it means to everyone. It wasn't until I saw that documentary last year that I knew it had a negative connotation for them. For me, I'm like, you made it to the Brat Pack. Like, you were an elite crew of people who were getting work in that era of young people. They looked at it as being derogatory. And I never really looked at yacht rock as being derogatory. That just tells me that you don't like the kind of music that's categorized into to be compared to yours. But it gets bought and it gets played and you get paid for it. I'm sorry if you don't like the bucket we put it in, but it's what we call it,
And Beato, who's interviewed, I think all of these folks I mentioned on his own show, says that a number of them, because he's spoken with them, do not like the term, and yet they appeared in the documentary. He suggests because they still want to get their music heard, like John's saying.
Sure.
And I think the fact that Steely Dan said use 6 of our songs, but also said go F yourself, supports that. It turns out this term, though, comes from a different source. In 2005, comedian J.D. Risner coined the term in his early YouTube series of the same name. That show satirized these folks, the lives of, rock stars of the late 70s and early 80s, including fictionalized versions of Kenny Loggins, Michael McDonald, Daryl Hall, and John Oates. And while Beato takes issue with it, and Fagen, for that matter, are offended by the term, some of the musicians that are, lampooned in this web series called Yacht Rock feel otherwise. John Oates credits Yacht Rock with rekindling interest in Hall & Oates and introducing them to a younger audience. And Michael McDonald praised the series in a 2008 interview, saying, quote, Yacht Rock was hilarious and uncannily, those things always have a little bit of truth to them. It's kind of like when you get a letter from a stalker who's never met you. They somehow hit on something, and you have to admit they're pretty intuitive. End quote. That's horrifying.
Let me spin this around. So let's say like the show was categorized into a lump of podcasts called Chatcasters, right? It's like, and it represents people that just get together and chat about current news. Okay. And that's a type of show. And Will might go, well, we do much more than that. We have true crime, we have topics, we have interviews and all that. But if there is a group if you're identified in this group and people like that group of chatcasters and you get represented, here's the top 10 chatcasters, would you go, get me off that damn list because that's not what I am?
Yeah.
Would that bother you? But it's like, well, just because people call you that, if you're getting the attention and you're getting highlighted and featured and heard, that is a frustration that only the elite can afford to be upset about, Yeah,
I think you're right. But, again, they say, to one another, the Yacht Rock, we don't like it, but where's the documentary filming? I'll be right there.
Yeah.
But, John, you're making a hypothetical, and I agree with you. I wouldn't have an argument. Look, I'd complain anyway, probably. But
you might bristle at it, right? We said, right? But you might still.
I'd be glad to be successful. But and all that's a hypothetical. I think we have a very real example. Being called a podcaster. That's become a derogatory thing. I joked early on that, just like everybody else, Rob Lowe has one. But it has become this thing like, right? It's kind of, I don't know, it's kind of gross. The way it's
but
used.
If the phone rings and it's like ring, 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 and Will answers, hey, we're making a documentary about podcasters and your name came up. You don't go fuck yourself, right?
Yeah, that's true.
I'll be there.
Yes, that's true.
I will be there with bells on.
Yeah, definitely true.
Maybe if I make a documentary called Lake Songs, then Fagen would be on that because it's out of love for what they do.
Let's see. Karen says, I call it soft rock lullabies because those were the songs I fell asleep to in my parents' car. When I have trouble falling asleep, I put on some Christopher Cross and I am out.
On the way to the lake.
Yes.
Yeah, I saw one of the things they said, they call it yacht rock because a lot of the songs feature, nautical themes, like sailing. And I thought, what else other than sailing?
And at some point, I heard that it was called that. I guess it's not true. Because it's the kind of music that you would hear playing on somebody's yacht.
Right.
Like that's the soundtrack of that lifestyle, the yacht lifestyle.
That's what I always assumed too. I never thought about it until now. But my assumption was, rich old man on expensive boat he owns is not out there headbanging, right? He's like,
Yes.
Yes.
He has soft rock, easy listening playing. Right, because he's old and rich, and he ain't got time for that anymore. My back can't do those dances anyhow, so I just play the soft music.
Yeah, and I think the yacht thing. I think that comes from again that series. Not only do they call it Yacht Rock, I think they do have people on a boat.
Yes,
they make fun of it. People on a boat, though.
Mm-hmm.
Marcus says, "Oh no, people like my stuff and other stuff that I think is different, and they are mislabeling it by the same group. Squirty little whiny babies."
That's a great impression of Marcus. Well
Thanks.
done.
Doug says podcast for old people. Let's see if they called us that, John. What would we think?
Would you show up for that documentary?
Well, you know what, John? Now look, here's an angle, right?
Define old.
Well, I'm thinking something else here. Your hypothetical was, I think, that the show is a commercial success. So you're like, right. Let's face it, most of us don't make any money. We're lucky if we break even with all the fees we got to pay and stuff.
Yep.
So this podcast for old people, am I making zero money but being called that? I don't know. It hurts a little more, I think. Joe says Yacht Rock equals hair bands. hairbands. Same concept, just a generality.
But it's like every once in a while you do an ego search on Google, right? You search for your name or for 1980s now to see what's out there, right? I certainly do it with Gen X Grown Up. And sometimes you show up on some list.
Yeah.
You know, top 10 podcasts for blah, blah, blah. Top 10 YouTubers for blah, blah, blah. And it's nobody that has any authority. You know, it's not USA Today putting me on the front page. And I always look at it as, well, at least I'm on a list. At least somebody noticed we exist, you know, even if it's top 10 podcasts to listen to on the shitter. Okay. Yeah. Wherever you enjoy it, that's okay. I don't, you know, at least you're looking, at least you're listening. But yeah, I think the successful, as I said, are the ones who can afford to be upset about it because they have success. If you're putting me in a bucket, at least you're paying attention. That's how I feel.
Marcus says, piss off, Johnny. I liked Rando Sally better. Her name was Meg. Marcus, Meg. Desperately seeking the 80s. Hey, next up in 1980s news. No, John, don't stay.
Stay.
He's got another job, Marcus. He doesn't have to be here. Hey, I know it sounds like we've got some giant corporate sponsor behind us, but we don't. Instead, our show is brought to you every week by listeners just like you. And by brought to you by them, I mean they help pay for the bills. And there's a bunch of them to bring you a quality podcast about 80s nostalgia and its continued impact today. Hey, to join this group of fantastic folks, please go to patreon.com/1980snow. And if you can't do that, follow us on Facebook, YouTube, and the podcast platform you're listening to right now. Hey, in other 1980s news per Variety, Romulus director fixed, I'm saying it like it's in quotes, fixed CGI in home for the home release. Alien Romulus director Fede Alvarez said in an interview with Empire Magazine that he understands why some viewers reacted negatively to the appearance of the late actor Ian Holm in the film. I think John and I touched on this in an episode a few weeks ago without giving anything away. Actually, we didn't mention who it was because we didn't want to spoil it. But yes, I guess you've had time now because these articles are everywhere.
That's right.
Holm, if you don't know, he played the android Ash in Ridley Scott's original Alien film. But sadly died in 2020 at 88 years old. The actor's likeness, however, was resurrected in Romulus via CGI for a new android character named Rook. But many viewers, including me, complained that Rook's appearance was mostly bad visual effects that looked like a muddled Ian Holm deepfake. And Alvarez agreed, quote, we just ran out of time in post-production to get it right. I wasn't 100% happy with some of the shots where you could feel a bit more the CG intervention. So for people that react negatively, I don't blame them. I liked the movie a lot. That, for me, took me out of it. That's my only complaint, I think, about that film was that. Otherwise, I think it sits finely within the canon of the franchise. Now,
Alien, well known to be on Cat's top 10 funniest movies, right up there with Thing, of course.
Yeah.
So here's the interesting thing, Will. When we found this article and we looked at it, we're like, you said, well, you watched the digital streaming version and you had the same criticism. So what they didn't have in this article was a side-by-side. I wanted to see before and after. I couldn't find that. So is what you saw the fixed version? In which case, imagine what I saw.
You know, I don't know, but I don't think so because I think the way I understand it from reading about it is it was in films, like it was in theaters rather, like, and you saw it. And then it became streaming within just a few weeks after it closed. And I believe that's the same digital version that was made available to movie houses around the country.
Okay.
Now, either it's out now or it's soon to be released. They made it for DVD and Blu-ray. And it's on that version that's improved.
Yeah. I think the article said Blu-ray, 4K, and digital. Now,
you're right.
Means digital streaming or digital whatever.
Yes, you're right.
That's what I'm wondering. Will streaming of it be the improved version?
No.
I wonder.
No, so far, no. Yeah, no. Okay. So Alvarez revealed that he corrected the appearance after he told the studios he was unhappy. Quote, I convinced the studio we need to spend more money. This is really unique and surprising, right? That he'd be able to convey.
After the fact.
Yeah.
Well, it's part of a storied franchise, so at least he has some ground to stand on. It's not some standalone film.
Yeah.
It's almost like the positive blowback of being in a franchise. Like, hey, we're part of this universe. We ought to fix it before it goes in the, in the registry.
Yeah. I convinced them to spend the money and make sure we give the companies that were involved in making it the proper time and finish it and do it right. It's so much better.
Alvarez went on to say, then I heard what Will had to say on the 1980s Now podcast and knew that we had to take corrective action.
1980s Now, the Yacht Rock of podcasts.
Top 10 on the shitter.
Now, while they've used, deepfake technology to some varying levels of success in most recent films, they're getting better at it. Although people on YouTube still seem way better at it than anybody working at a studio for some reason.
Isn't that weird?
And Disney even hired the guy Shamook, I think his name Shamook, who was making all these crazy deepfakes for years to do the indie movie and some of the Star Wars stuff. And those aren't as good as what he did on YouTube. I don't understand it. But they did a little something different to bring Ian home back. It was a combination of CGI and an animatronic. They actually created the head and torso of the character and had it on set. It was rigged to be able to speak and eyes move, arms, etc. And they were able to create the likeness of home, not because they had a cast of him from an earlier film, including Alien, but because he did the Hobbit films, and they had made a cast of his face then. So they took this face of him that was older and used it as a leaping off point to make him look like he did in 1979.
Interesting.
And after they filmed the puppet, they used some CG over it to try to tweak some of the look of it, etc. And I think that's where it fails. Why they didn't just do straight up deep fake, I don't know. The Corridor Crew folks, which is a channel that I love watching, said it's like they essentially deep faked a puppet where you lose all the humanity. You want to deep fake on an actor who's a stand-in.
The interesting thing is that it's an android. It's a cyborg, right? And so knowing that as a viewer in accepting the universe and, suspending your disbelief, I know that he's artificial. But even then, he seemed artificial for an artificial life form,
right?
Because the cyborgs, the mechanical people in Alien are effectively, in fact, the whole twist. I'm sorry, spoiling it for you, Kat. The whole twist in Alien is you didn't know he was an android until later you find out. So he was easily passing for a human. So, but even malfunctioning as he was, and kind of a torso on a table, and even then, it didn't feel right. It felt artificial.
Yeah, and I think part of the problem for me was, talking about the Alien film again, the original, he also gets destroyed there, and at some point he's just a talking head and torso. So we know exactly what it should look like.
You know what that looks like.
And it looks nothing like that.
When I read this, I thought I understood that when they used the animatronic or puppet, that's what made it better. What they did, I thought it said what we did for the home entertainment version was revert a lot more to the puppet.
Yeah.
So am I misunderstanding you, Will? I wasn't quite sure there.
Right.
I thought you were saying they used the puppet more for the movie theaters and then improved upon that. But it sounds like they used the puppet for the improved version.
So what they did was, again, they had this puppet, which I think they knew they were going to use CG to tweak it somewhat.
Okay.
But they filmed the puppet, and again, they made it so articulate that in theory, to John's point, it may convince us that, well, it's an android, so of course it's kind of weird and janky.
Yeah.
But in the original version that was in theaters, they did a lot of CGI replacement on its face, changing the eyes and painting, doing some different animation with the mouth, maybe, stuff like that. And then to fix it, they took away some of that CG stuff and, I imagine them almost making it more transparent so we see more puppet coming through,
Okay, all right, that makes sense.
And of course it's not like this, but I almost imagine the puppet with the little green dots on its face.
Right.
That would have helped.
And then you're mapping Ian Holm on it, right? But it sounds like it wasn't.
They should have just had a guy that looks kind of like
just have a guy
there.
Yep. And
if you look at the Alien film, and this really frustrates me, there's so much footage of him in bright light because, in these different areas in the movie, we're all these different angles.
Yes.
I mean, it's there. Anyway, John, you weren't able to find it, but I do have a side-by-side comparison of the two.
Oh, really?
And I didn't block out which is the original and which is the fixed one. I wish I had because, well, you'll see. Here's the two. One's, it's stacked vertically, so you can see both at the same time. I'll just pause it. All right, so The top is the improved version. The bottom is the one that was streamed. So far, do we feel like this is an improvement?
They look pretty similar to me right now.
Yeah.
It looks like what they did is maybe put him further in shadow to hide some of the fact that he's not looking so fantastic.
He's a little less shiny, and it's pulled out a bit, if in fact that's the frame by frame. Yeah.
It's less contrasty, maybe. Now, on my very small screen that I'm looking at this, it's pretty convincing. The improved one, but when I looked at this earlier on my monitor upstairs, it looks just as bad. I mean, that looks like that angle right there, that looks pretty good, but the top one, that is.
Yeah.
But it's not a huge improvement.
There's still an uncanny valley problem in there.
That's really just a huge spoiler for everybody. I'm sorry.
Come on in here, puppet.
Oops.
I'm fine. Don't worry about spoilers.
Well, no, I was worried about everybody else too, and you, but everybody. Look, it ultimately didn't matter. It opened to solid reviews and earned $350 million at the worldwide box office, and was a recent nominee at the Golden Globes for cinematic and box office achievement.
Ooh!
I don't know.
Wow!
That was the biggest bummer to me. It was a great idea, and actually. Fagen had, he wrote the movie as well. So he had this idea of bringing an android back. All the Alien films feature an android. I don't think there's an exception to that. Every single one has an android character in it. What varies is whether or not they're a protagonist or an antagonist, Or
in the case of this film, both, based on which chip you have in your head.
You're right. Very good. When it came to choosing what the android would look like, Fagen says he went with the home version of the synthetic, because he said that the other actors who played synthetic characters had already had a lot of screen time.
Yeah, I really don't follow that logic, because there was a lead character who was also a synthetic in this movie, but they wanted to have another one that was a legacy synthetic, I guess, to represent the age of this ship that they were on.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a great idea because it does provide this continuity, because this is a prequel. Or rather, it's set between the two films, Alien and
midquel, or whatever they called it. Yeah.
A mequel. Because it was kind of meek. He only did so, however, after receiving the blessing of Holmes' widow and children.
Right. Would you guys approve if we made a puppet that looked vaguely like the guy that used to know?
Like your dead father?
Sure. Make sure he's all plasticky. Okay, sure. We'll do that.
And he's half melted and spine is sticking out.
It was all part of the request. Yeah. We don't want him looking too real.
And they see it and it's triggering, because this is exactly how Dad died.
I hate trains.
Doug says, come to think of it, how do I know you guys aren't just talking heads, torsos, and arms?
Nope.
That's true. That's a good point.
Good point.
Hey, also in 1980s news, as reported by People, Steve Guttenberg helps battle the Los Angeles wildfires.
The Goot.
Holy shit, man. What's going out over there? It's just fucking bonkers, man. It's horrible. It's really just horrible. According to officials, the flames first began around 10:30 a.m. Tuesday, January 7th, southeast of Palisades Drive. As the fire began to consume more land and destroy buildings, residents were forced to flee. As they were ordered to evacuate to safety, the Police Academy star, who's 66, was one of many who jumped into action to help. And while days later, Guttenberg's Pacific Palisades home remained untouched by the fire, new winds are leaving it vulnerable once again.
Yeah.
It's not over. Every time this wind shifts, it's blowing embers onto other things and starting new fires.
Did I hear winds up to 80 miles per hour?
Yes.
Is that a factual thing? I know what those winds are. I live in Florida. 80 miles an hour is no joke. When they're here, they're full of rain. They're full of fire.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Yeah, and people criticizing, like, why don't we get more helicopters in the air and planes to drop water, et cetera. It's like, would you fly in a plane that was going into winds that were 88 miles per hour?
Full of fire?
Full of fire?
Did I mention full of fire?
Yeah, I think the most frustrating thing about this is all the nonsense on the internet that people are saying. It's bullshit. There's two lines of things that are driving me crazy. One, the firefighters aren't doing enough.
Well, get in your truck.
Yeah, right.
Come help. Yes, come help.
I'll leave it to the experts. I know that they're motivated to do what they do. Put out fires. And two, it's like, fuck the rich people whose homes are burning down. Well, it turns out there's a whole lot of other people that are not rich that are also getting affected as well. But also, what do you have? You have against these people that they're rich. They're humans just like you with possessions and families and cherished items and memories. And they don't, whether they can afford to buy a new home or have a second home already, it's still traumatic.
And the part that bothers me is like all the finger pointing and, oh, they should have done this, or they should have seen this, or they should be doing this. No.
Yeah. Could we finger point later?
Right. Or maybe
save
not
that?
at all. Like this is happening.
They're going to do it. Can we do it after people are safe is what I'm saying. You know what I mean?
Right.
Let's not make it a condition of the help.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And there's lies and misinformation, that are fueling some of these arguments.
There's a big surprise.
Anyway, meanwhile, while Guttenberg's still worried about his house, he still is continuing to do what he can to help keep the neighborhood safe. Quote, at this time, I have the choice of sitting down and walking or standing up and doing what I can. I choose to stand and fight and help, end quote. Guttenberg has banded together with several neighbors whose homes also made it. Quote, they're having meals together, working on getting brush out of the way, trying to put out smoldering fires and fighting embers in the air. They've been getting food and necessities, portable heaters, water through rapid relief groups and sharing everything and basically taking care of each other, end quote. What a stand-up guy. And I don't know if you saw, I think the morning of the fires, it was probably mid-afternoon or late morning. I finally was checking on the news, and the reporter was interviewing somebody, and they're like, when they're done with the interview, they say, "And what is your name, sir?" Steve Guttenberg. "And do you live here?" "Yes, my house is right over there." And then he has a mask on because the smoke is overwhelming. He takes the mask off. He's like, "Oh, you're the actor. Oh, okay.
Oh, that's Steve Guttenberg."
Yeah, all right. The actor compared the tragedy he witnessed over the last couple of days to a sudden death. Quote, it's like when somebody dies suddenly. It's like when someone gets hit by a car, you never expect that to happen. That's how shocking it was, end quote. Entire neighborhoods are gone. It's insane. I mean, just think about where you live right now. Even if my house survived, if all my neighbors' homes were burned to the ground.
Oh my gosh.
That all broke out last week when I was on the West Coast. And many of my friends and colleagues that I knew there, they lived in the LA area, and they're on the phone with their loved ones like, I'm here right now, but what do we pack? Where do I go? What do I do? Kind of thing. It waits for no one, and it affects people across all stratifications.
Yeah, my kid, you guys know this. My kid is out there.
Right.
And they're between the two fires, the Palisades and the Eaton fires. So we're watching it constantly. But they've now, we have friends out there that live in the suburbs, about 45 minutes out from LA, and they're with them right now.
That's good.
Mostly, even if you're not within the danger of the fire, the smoke is overwhelming. If you're outside, you have to wear a mask.
Yes.
But they were shutting down things all around my kid at one point. Stuff's back open and running now, but it's awful and terrifying, and just really, you would think it's preventable. It's something they could anticipate because it happens not infrequently. But again, we'll wait for the post-mortem to see what they could do or could have done. Karen says, I have family in California, and over the weekend they could see the flames and smoke at their house. Oh yeah, yep. Brandon says, goes to show you even famous people can be the same as us regular folks and help. Yeah. We've had the good fortune to speak to a number of famous people, and I've performed or otherwise known famous people. Some of my friends are performing. I have had the luck that not a single one of them is an asshole. They all seem very normal and regular. They're just people. Their job just happens to be being on TV or movies.
Right.
Yep. I mean, most of them. There's exceptions where folks are like, seem like aliens, but Tom Cruise.
I was thinking like Huy Quan, like he's just this, adorable, normal guy, right? Who happens to have won an award for his acting.
And finally, on 1980s news, as reported by Vogue, Demi Moore was once called a popcorn actress. Even on a night that was remarkably full of tributes to and love for women over 50, it's hard to think of a moment more emotional or impactful at the 2025 Golden Globes than Demi Moore's Best Actress win for her role in The Substance. Surprisingly, it marked the first major industry award for the 62-year-old actor, who's been performing for 45 years in dozens of films that we've loved over the years.
Yeah.
In her acceptance speech, Moore acknowledged that for a long time, she didn't believe that being recognized in such a way could be possible for her, saying, quote, 30 years ago, I had a producer tell me that I was a popcorn actress. And at the time, I made that mean that this award wasn't something that I was allowed to have, that I could do movies that were successful, that made a lot of money, but that I couldn't be acknowledged. And that corroded me over time to a point where I thought a few years ago that maybe this was it, end quote.
Interesting.
Like we talked about last week, with Mike Myers having imposter syndrome, et cetera. And to our point earlier, that these are just regular people filled with the same anxieties and voices in their heads, and especially artists, man, real sensitive folk. that are susceptible to these things. But it's sad. Look, she's had success, she's got money, etc. But to feel this way about yourself because of some comment that some wise ass made 30 years ago, he probably, I'm assuming it's a he probably hasn't given it a second thought, but it's been haunting her for the last 30 years.
Some offhanded comment, probably, right?
Yeah, that's the way things go sometimes. Yeah, some things stick with you.
Do you think it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, though? I mean, she continued to perform, but wasn't recognized. And so, how do I put this put my thoughts into words? The fact that she did not receive accolades or recognition made it justified her belief that she was this sort of just not marketable, yet not award-worthy actress.
Right.
Or do you think it actually, the label that she felt on herself actually held her back from putting out the kind of work that would be recognizable and award-worthy? Does that make sense?
No,
I wonder if it was...
Hear you.
Which angle kind of caused it to be true?
Well, she admits, she says that she bought into it so that she accepted it.
Yeah.
So in that sense, John, because you're talking about some kind of sort of circular thing, almost that self-feeding.
Right, but I mean, does that make you a lesser performer, or
perspective is everything? If you believe something about yourself,
that prevent her from seeking the roles, maybe that would make her that kind of actress. But it might have been that kind of thing. Maybe she didn't do substandard work, but didn't pursue the kind of work because she thought maybe she wasn't worthy of it based on what she believed about herself.
I think that's true, John. And I think that's basically what she said. Believing what this producer said, that's the role she then took. The stuff that's more commercially more guaranteed commercially successful, not maybe artistic. Which I want to talk about that. But just for folks who, I'm sure you're familiar with Demi Moore's work, but just to get in the headspace of this producer and Demi Moore, 30 years ago, this is the time when she was the most bankable.
Yes.
She had starred in A Few Good Men, Decent Proposal, and Ghost, which was the highest grossing film of 1990.
Right.
So, this kind of flippant comment, you're saying to this woman who's making you a shitload of money. But to John's, point or question, is it even bad to be a, quote, popcorn actress?
I don't think so. Whatever that person who said it meant by it, he obviously had something in mind, but who knows what it really was.
Yeah.
Did he mean it to be derogatory? I don't know. But to me, it could mean like, you are really entertaining and I'm just going to, sit here and take it all in. Right.
It's possible. Although the way she took it, it seems like maybe the context was different.
Right.
It sounds like it was a downplay.
Yeah. It could have been, I really want to do this artsy film. And he's like, honey, you're a popcorn actress.
You're a popcorn actress. Yeah.
Right. Right.
It kind of goes back to the Brat Pack and the Yacht Rock kind of thing, So here's this label. What does this label mean to you? What does the label being on you mean to others? And how does that impact you in your career? Does it impact you in your career, or is it just a mind game you're playing with yourself? You can imagine that if she heard that and it meant nothing to her, it would not have affected her career because it would have been, she would have forgotten it like the producer who said it to her most likely, but it did. It affected her and it meant something to her and therefore internalized and led to the things we just talked about probably. So
yeah,
it's only bad if you hear it and think it's bad.
Exactly. Somebody else might have taken it as a challenge. It's like, oh, you think I'm what? And then
perhaps. Yeah.
I've got to say, I've got quotes in my head of the things that people have said to me 30 years ago that I'm guaranteed they have not given a second thought to, but to me it's like, oh yeah, that's right.
I have those too.
Give us a couple.
Why don't you smile more, honey? Was one of them.
Oh no.
Yeah, stuck with me. In her opinion piece in the Nashville Tennessean, Andrea Williams suggests that Moore's experience highlights the enduring battle between art and commerce, like we're suggesting here. The unspoken narrative, she suggests, being that in most cases, the two are mutually exclusive. And some examples she gives, like folks, in the romance and thriller, section of the bookstore, move millions of books versus the literary fiction authors who, sell few but win awards. Or visual artists who are not, who work doing graphic design, but are not in have their work hung in museums, that sort of thing. Now, she argues that the gulf that between these two, cash and critical acclaim, is widened by the industry gatekeepers. And maybe that's what happened with, this person Moore was speaking with. It's sad, but it does seem true that they're exclusive. I guess the gatekeepers do this in a sense because I don't look at, do we have the Academy Award announcements yet? I know we had BAFTA award announcements, but you guarantee among those aren't going to be the films that you most enjoyed this year.
Right. Not every year is a My Cousin Vinny year. Most of them are not, right?
No.
Right.
Why do we do that as humans? Why do we reward something that seems smarter and more esoteric than the thing that, most of us see and enjoy? It's kind of weird.
You could fill a hard drive with Academy Award winning movies that I don't give a shit about and haven't watched.
Right. Haven't seen,
Some people will go, I got to go and watch all the nominated films. Why now? Why did you not watch it when it was out? You know why? Because you didn't care. Why do you care now?
Right.
It wasn't your kind of movie. Now, you could argue, well, I didn't know it was so good, but you didn't give it a chance because you weren't interested in it before. Yeah. It's good. It's a good version of something you don't care about. So why are you now swarming? I don't care for Citizen Kane. It's one of the lauded as the best film of all. Well, sure. Even if you take out of the mix that it was a film of a different era and filmmaking hadn't been matured yet and structure and editing wasn't there, it's still just kind of a movie that's up its own ass with Orson Welles' ego. And I don't find it that fascinating.
It is awful. Yeah.
By the way, it's a sled. It's just a sled. So why do you separate those movies that are good versus those that are enjoyable and fun? It's dumb.
I think I know why.
Oh, finally.
I know why. Because I think you're hitting on it, John.
Let's hear it.
You hit on it with this example that folks will see the Academy Awards or the list and think, I've got to go see these movies now. I didn't watch them last year, but now I got to hurry up. And they even have these screenings where you can see all of them in one sitting, sit in the theater for 8 hours and see them all or whatever.
Punishment.
Like 24 hours. But I think
they strap you in.
I think you remind me or make me realize it's about status. An elite group of people say, if you're smart and cool and, whatever, educated and sophisticated like us, these are the movies you're like. And other people buy into it. Like this, this hypothetical audience member you're talking about, John. It's like, well, I'll go see it too. Because now at the, when I'm in the cocktail party, I'll be able to say, well,
now they say it's good. So now I'm allowed to see it, right? Otherwise.
I saw The Brutalist. Did anyone else see it? No? Okay, well, I'm no one to talk to about it, but
at least they know I saw it.
Now, I think Demi Moore gets the last laugh because the substance is kind of both, right? I mean, the way she referred to the script as being magical, bold, courageous, out of the box, absolutely bonkers. And obviously, the fact that she made this comment in her speech is suggesting that she, like other folks, believe that the substance is more elevated than your traditional body horror film. And it is. It makes social commentary, and it's done in a way that's more clever than, your slasher films. But it also made money. It turns out that it earned $78 million domestically and globally. And when you think, well, that's kind of a pittance compared to your latest Avengers movie. It only cost $17 million to make.
Wow.
Take that, Red One.
Yeah. So I think you can have it both ways. I think ultimately. I'm about to end the show, Kat. Marcus says,
"Here's me. I'm prepared."
Squeak.
Marcus, get that out of here. Marcus says, just because she is now more acclaimed doesn't mean she should have been before. Is there a chance that maybe the producer was right? Yeah, I think we sort of touched on that, right? Mm-hmm. She definitely was a popcorn actor in the sense that she was in some big budget films that brought and put people in seats.
I made a similar argument back last year before last about how are we so big fans of Huy Quan because he's a great actor or because we like him and we think he deserves it?
Right.
You know what I think?
Yeah.
Right. Marcus kind of makes that same thing. Is like, are we looking in hindsight and going, oh, she should have been winning awards, or maybe she shouldn't have been back then.
Right. Now
she just earned it. Finally, she's done a role that was worthy of that. And I think that's a valid observation. It's not for me to make the determinations, any of us, but it doesn't necessarily mean that she was shunned before and now she's not. Maybe she just never found that role. Or as we said, did not seek those roles out because she felt she was unworthy for them.
Right. Because of her own inner workings. Because that's what we're talking about, right? Like
Could
her
be,
own,
certainly.
Her own perceptions of herself.
Internal,
and
dialogue,
her process. Yeah.
Karen says the tone of voice when he said it would tell you a lot too. When I take voicemails off my phone at work, sometimes their tone of voice can make me angry or anxious. Yeah, I know, right? Versus you could do that with a text though too, right? You impose the tone.
Yes.
Yeah. Don't end a text with ... I'm sick of that.
Yeah. Right. John and I were texting each other and he accidentally put an angry face on something. And I was like, why are you mad?
That's right.
I was like, why are you mad at me?
I'm like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, what'd I do?
In his head, we'd had a whole argument that I hadn't had.
How did that piss him off? I also
He
said,
didn't show up last week.
That's right. Boycott the show.
I also suggested maybe he wasn't excited enough about something I sent, a message I sent.
That's right.
So yeah. And Brandon says the value of the film is based upon the viewer. Nominations and Rotten Tomatoes scores don't mean shit.
Yeah.
It's true. It's kind of like what will the market bear, right?
Yeah.
But that's not what the awards are not awarded based on that, unfortunately, based on what we think and how we feel about it and how entertaining it was. It is done by those industry professionals that are kind of an elite crew. They make the decision, not us.
Marcus says Will probably wasn't a very good podcaster in 1998. You're right. But I could have been. But someone told me I was a Yacht Rock or whatever John said earlier. Whatever John said.
You did not make the top 10 on the shitter, did you?
Chatter Talkers. What was that? All right.
Chatcasters. Yeah.
That was the show.
Chatcasters. And that show was brought to you thanks in part to our early adopters, Rick Parker and Karen Flieger. Yes.
Yeah.
And thank you especially to our Secret of Our Success level Patreon supporters, Nick Guillory, Marcus Taylor, Tony Great, Matt Marino, John Henderson, and Brandon Greer.
Great. Thank you so much, guys. We are so grateful. I hope you feel the love because we have it for you guys. We certainly appreciate how you continue to support the show week after week. We could not do it without you. Hey, please join these folks. Help us keep the show afloat. Go to patreon.com/1980s now and you give us literally $1. $1. You got $1. Look at the couch cushions. Do people still drop coins and money in the couch cushions? Do we have couch cushions? Do we have crevices in couches anymore? I don't know. I've got a few milk crates lashed together with an old hemp rope. But yeah, and if you can't do that, hey, join us on a live, comment on a Facebook post, subscribe to our YouTube channel. All those things are free. All right. Hey, we will talk to you again next time on 1980s Now.
Until next time.
I got to go perform with Toto.
And I'm going to be busy, figuring out how to edit this in a way that doesn't sound like I just yelled at Kat.